Maybe you like electronic music, but the complexity of a synth is overwhelming. Or maybe you only write for real live musicians. But if you want to work on film and video game projects, I have a reality check for you. Most projects, especially when starting out, don't have the budget for a symphony orchestra. And what do you do anyway if you get a gig and the director wants you to incorporate electronic elements? Today, I'm going to cover 5 basic ways you can take an existing synth preset and make some simple changes to make it your own. For the examples, I'm using Arturia pigments, but the things I talk about are standard in pretty much any synthesizer. Thank you to Loot Audio for providing me with the Chapter 1 Exile Pigment preset pack, which I'll be using for the examples in this video. So why are we starting with presets? Well, I think there is a lot of value in building your own sounds from scratch, but if you don't really know your way around a synth, or you don't have a lot of time, finding a preset that's 90% close to what you want is a reasonable thing to do. Then, by understanding what's actually going on with the sound, you can bring it even closer to what you want and even add a personal touch. Once you've found a patch you like, the first thing you should do is isolate the sound sources. Depending on the synth, this can mean the oscillators, wavetables, samples, even noise. So let's say, for example, I find this Meadows patch that I like. But there's this kind of low, washy, long reverb happening that's kind of muddying up my mix. So what we can do is isolate the different sounds and figure out which parts are doing what. So in this case, I'll start with engine 1. You can hear that that's that kind of almost marimba-like sound. Engine 2. There's our long, washy tail that's filling up that mid-low end. And the utility engine, this little tight square wave. So if I just take engines 1 and 2, I get the character of that sound I really like without that big washy mud kind of filling it up. So just by isolating those sounds, I can kind of customize this to be more useful. Or we could take another patch. Let's try flavors. So there's 2 engines here. So engine 1 is this. Engine 2 is this. So if we only use engine 2, we get this really nice ambient kind of lead. It's kind of somewhere between a lead and a pad sound. So again, the first step is just to isolate the different sounds that are building up the patch and making the different elements so you can figure out which ones you like. The next section to play with is the envelope, which might also be called ADSR, and that stands for attack, decay, sustain, and release. These settings basically control how the sound speaks over time. By playing with these settings, you can turn an existing patch into a very different sound, or even just bring it closer to the rhythm or tempo of your specific track. So we'll use a simple square wave for demonstration. Attack controls how long it takes for the sound to go from silence to the full volume after you press the key. So here, it's almost instant. If we have a very long attack, it takes a lot of time to build up. So slow attacks are good for pads and maybe expressive lead sounds, and short attacks are better for keys and more percussive sounds. Let's skip decay for a second and look at sustain. So sustain is basically the level your sound will settle to after hitting its initial peak from the attack. So here it's at full sound, but we can bring that down. So we'll have that loud attack and it will settle down. So that's how you can get a very kind of punchy attack sound, is by having a strong attack and a low sustain. Of course, we could also have it build up and come down. So now we'll look at decay. Decay is the time from the peak of your attack until it settles to the sustain. So you can see here visually, we're extending that. So it can be instant, or it can be very long. And the last part is release. And release is how long it takes from when you let go of the key for the sound to go from its sustain level to silence. So right now we have a pretty short release, but if we make that long, you can see that it
fades away off into the distance. So it's not exactly like a reverb effect, but it does give you more space and kind of a washier sound. So pads will have a longer release, but a very short percussive sound or a bass, you probably want a shorter release. So by playing with these different settings, we can take an existing patch and make it into a pretty different sound, or even just one that better fits our tempo or the rhythm of our track. For example, we could take this patch a new turn and shorten the decay for a punchier, more percussive sound. Or we could lengthen the attack for a softer sound. Nice. Or let's take another one. Here's Just Now. If I extend that decay and lengthen the attack, we've now turned that from kind of a keyboard sound into a pad.
Next up is filters. Generally speaking, filters are used to cut or boost certain frequencies in the sound. Most commonly, you'll cut the high frequencies to make your sound mellower and softer.
So here's our basic square wave again. If I lower the filter here, the high frequencies will get cut off. So if we look at this patch tenderness, and we actually turn off filter 1, you can hear that there's this kind of warbly, reverby pad in the background that was actually being hidden and filtered away by filter 1. So by finding a patch that was kind of interesting and just exploring it a little bit, we can find new sounds that weren't ever necessarily intended. This patch Mr. Room is a good example of how different elements can start to work together. So here, the filter is actually being controlled by envelope 3. Using those same settings of attack, decay, sustain, release, it's controlling the amount of time that gets affected to filter 1. So if you see, that's at 3.6 seconds. If I lower that down, the filter will open up almost instantly. Notice how this curve here is matching the shape of the cutoff.
Another way to change things over time is with an LFO, or low frequency oscillator. Low frequency is basically another way of saying slow, and it's an oscillator because it keeps repeating back and forth in a cycle. An LFO can be patched up to anything you want to change in your sound, for example, pitch or the filter cutoff.
So we could take this patch, No Clowns, set the LFO to sync to an 1/8 note, and have it modulate our volume. Bring our main volume down a bit. Let's have LFO 1 modulate the volume. Now we have this pulsing sound, which is also connected to the tempo. So in any track where you want a consistent 1/8 note pulse, you can use an LFO to control different things. We could even have it affect the cutoff. Or we could take an ambient patch, here's an atmospheric one, and apply, let's take LFO 3 and apply it to the pan. So now it's moving back and forth, left and right, taking advantage of the stereo field.
Another common way to change things is with the mod wheel, mod being short for modulation or change. If you use orchestral VSTs, you're probably already used to using the mod wheel for expression or dynamics. With a synth, you can use the mod wheel for anything. Filter cutoff is a common choice, so as the mod wheel goes up, the sound gets brighter. But of course, we can do more than that.
So here, just on our basic square wave again, I'll take the cutoff down a little bit and have our mod wheel raise it up. So now as I play the mod wheel, switch this to keyboard. Which lets you be more expressive as you're playing your patch. But we can do other things with that. So let's take distraction, this evolving pad. What if we took LFO 1 and actually patched it to the filter volume? And then assigned our mod wheel to LFO 1. We'll do it to both the rate and the amount of cutoff. Oops. So as I raise the mod wheel now, we get this kind of vibrato effect almost.
Thank you again to Loot Audio for providing me with the Pigments preset pack. Starting from a preset is a really great and efficient way to work and can teach you a lot about what your synth is capable of. But at some point, you're going to want to graduate to building your own sounds from the ground up. That's why you have to check out this video here, where I make my case for why Syntorial is the best way to do that. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.